Hello and welcome to the Spare Change Podcast. Today I have on Tom Brickman. Tom, I know we already discussed some things, specifically talking about how you recently hit financial independence, your background in real estate, and uh, using eBay and some other side hustles. I'd love for you to introduce yourself and just kind of talk to us about how you got started in the world of financial independence and some of the things you've been doing.
Definitely. My name's Tom Brickman. I go by the Frugal Gay on Instagram and Twitter and my website. I am 39 years old, married dog dad from Dallas, Texas. I currently own 21 rental doors, which is why I was able to hit my FI numbers. I have a resale business called Cheap Closeout, and I buy and resell merchandise for eBay and Amazon. And I started the Frugal Gay about 1.5 years ago, as I knew I was ready to transition out of my job, and started that to network with others who were in the same boat and show others that it is possible. I worked at a movie theater for 15 years, so I didn't have a high-paying job, and I was still able to hit that number before I turned 40.
Awesome. What are some of the things that kind of motivated you to take the path of, instead of just sticking to your 9 to 5, what kind of pushed you in the direction of seeking more passive income and doing some side hustles to kind of improve your financial situation?
I knew if I just counted on my 9 to 5, I would be working at it till I was 60 plus. So I just found other ways to generate income. I did eBay while I was in college because I didn't have enough to pay for books. And I would flip purses. I would flip pretty much anything. In addition to eBay, I just would take any extra side hustle. There were times where I'd go help clean. There were times that I would go source merchandise for resellers at the flea market. I would do yard sales with my friends, and just we came up with ways to generate that income. And if I could figure out a way to make money on it, I did it. And my motivation for that was I didn't want to work till I was 70. I did not want to, working at a movie theater, I work nights, weekends, and holidays. And I knew by 29 that I wanted to hit this number before I was 40. And I just figured out a way to buy at least one property every year, to fix that property every year. Some of them I've sold off, some of them I've traded into better properties. And the majority of them are in my buy and hold long-term portfolios. So I've picked up 5 properties this year, which I know if I were working a traditional job, I definitely wouldn't have the time, energy, or effort to do that. And I just, my end goal was I don't want to do this until I'm 70, and I just kept going with it. And there's years that I can make great money on eBay, and there's years that I can make great money from my rentals. And then there's years that everything I make gets poured back into the rentals to improve them, to fix them. So that's kind of, where I am and where I've been. And this year, buying 5 already, I'm pouring every ounce of money coming in back into the properties to improve them and get them rented. And that's where I'm at with my journey.
I think that's great. Definitely, I'd say it's a very unique approach to do all of the things you've done all at the same time. I think that you're probably very capable of loading a bigger plate than some other folks that I've met. What would you say, just from an outside perspective, someone who's at that age range where they're like myself, 23, 24, or maybe even like a younger demographic, what would be their best practices? Like, did you start with an LLC, or like how did you lay the groundwork and the foundation for everything?
So I bought my first one at 21. I was working at the Gap. I was making $8.50 an hour while I was in college, and I didn't want to pay rent. So that was my motive. So I bought the first one in my name. I put 10% down. I had been purchasing Gap stock while I worked for the company, and I cashed it all in, and I bought that door number one. I think the biggest thing when you're starting to lay the groundwork before you're deciding about LLC and whatnot is getting rid of the bad debt. Because I bought door one, I bought door two, it was a duplex. And then I bought door number three with no plan when I was 22. And then I moved to Dallas and I was 26 or so, and I wanted to buy that fourth property, and they're like, we can't lend you any money of $17,000 in credit card debt. So I took on a second job and went and worked retail to get rid of that debt. And that's the key, is making yourself credit worthy and getting rid of that debt, because it's going to hold you down like an anchor. And the second you can fix that or pay it off, it moves you ahead. And once I got that cleared up, it took me a year of working retail to get rid of that 17,000. It just kind of all proceeded and kept going and building. And, I bought that one. And I guess the first property I bought in Dallas was 2008. And then I just kind of stuck on at least one per year. I know in 2013, I picked up 3 that year because I had put out 3 offers, and I'm like, they're not all going to be accepted at once. And all 3 got accepted. And I just figured out where to get the money and make it work. It was a very rough month when I bought 3 at one time.
Yeah, I'd imagine getting wrapped up in a lot of debt early on can be detrimental. But when we talk about like managing our debt, and then also speaking from the perspective of like a bank or a lender, and they see that debt and you're working a retail position, when they see that high debt to income ratio, I can see where it would be a concern. But also the idea that you had already started utilizing money that you had invested. So when you talk about like purchasing company stock and then leveraging it to purchase properties that then build passive income, it seems slightly odd. But I mean, I have an understanding of like, when someone's young and they have a high debt to income ratio, it can be a very strong indicator of maybe some financial risky behavior. But I don't think using company stock and the sale of company stock to purchase passive income generating assets would necessarily be the worst thing ever when you go to that lender. So what did you do as far as managing debt? I know you spoke on like you worked in retail and you worked for a while to manage that initial debt that you couldn't get any additional like loans or any money from a lender. What do you do now that's different than what you did then in the way of managing your debt and leveraging debt to your own benefit?
So for my 21 doors, I don't carry a ton of debt on them. I'm pretty conservative in that, and investors always are like, why would you not have loans on these? So a lot of the stuff that I've bought this year, I've bought in cash. I've fixed up a property, I sold it off, and I used the proceeds from that property and turned it into the 5 other properties. Some things that you can do if you don't have, like, I know when I went and worked retail, that was offered, and that's why I had that company stock. If you don't have that opportunity to buy company stock, what can you do to generate extra income? And that was always my focus, when I was in debt and when I was buying these properties, is what can I do to generate income? So I have a friend that was messaging me today, and she is up to her eyeballs in debt. And I'm like, start cooking this weekend, start babysitting, start going and doing lawns, start doing whatever you have to do to make an extra $100 this weekend to start taking yourself out, because that's what it's going to take. And that's kind of been my mentality since I started, was, okay, I'm limited with what I can make at my job, but I do have this free time. I do have this time off. What can I do to generate income during this time that's going to help me dig out quicker. And you know what? She's at the point where she's making maybe 100 to 200 extra dollars a month. And that's doing something instead of just paying those minimum payments and working it out over the next 5 years. She'll be able to dig herself out within a year, just throwing the extra $200 on. So I think that's important because everyone wants to wait for it to be fixed for them. But I've always looked at, and I was super stressed. I had just enough money to buy all 3 properties that I bought in 2013, but I had no money to fix any of them. And there was a lot of money that had to go into them. They were all distressed properties. I've always bought distressed properties. So I had to get creative and I had to figure out a way to start generating more income. Okay, now I've spent all my income buying these properties. Now I have to figure out how to fix them and get them rented. And just thinking outside the box, like, what can I do? And we didn't, back then you didn't have Uber or Lyft that you could go do for a weekend. So you just had to, I remember a time I had a cleaning lady and she's like, I have no one to come clean with me. And it's crazy that I have a cleaning lady, but I'm going and cleaning other houses with her. But I did it because it was, an extra $75 to go over there and help her for a couple hours and clean. And it was just one of those things that you had to get creative and figure out a way to make it work. And that's how I did it back then.
Yeah, I think it's important to highlight, like, a lot of the income that you were generating actively, you were pushing direct into all of the other, like, more passive ventures. And one thing I was curious about is, with eBay and some of your other side hustles outside of real estate, have any of those gone from something that you were highly active in to something that's still generating you passive income today? Or was it just like to flip and build income?
I am not very actively buying merchandise for eBay, or I whenever I have time, I'll sit and I'll list and I'll process and I'll ship out, but it's pretty passive at this point where the merchandise is listed. Yesterday we had 7 sales that came through, and I'm not doing any like fulfilled by Amazon. I'm still packaging up the item and I'm shipping out the item. I do sell on Amazon as well, and I can do it as little or as much as I want. And that's, this past weekend I was standing in line at a TJ Maxx, and I was just scanning things with the Amazon app. And then I came on this body wash, or not a body wash, but a body spray. And it was like $3.99 at TJ Maxx, and it was $23 on Amazon. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just try this. And I bought it for $4 at TJ Maxx, and I listed it, and it actually already sold because it was in the buy box on Amazon. So it's one of those that you can do as much or as little as you want with that. And same with I was all self-managed, and now with 21 doors, I have a property manager that looks over 14 of them. And they kind of let me know when issues arise with the properties or if something isn't getting done, and I'll step in there. But I've learned to take my foot off the pedal because I can't handle 21 properties all at once with different renovations going on and all that.
I think one of the things that really interests me when it comes to like business ownership and developing yourself in the business world, at some point, the amount of control that you have over all of your different levels of operation has to go to somebody else. Because if you intend to grow and scale at some point, like you're talking about, you had to kind of take your foot off and let somebody else take control in those aspects. I think it's important, not only in just work-life balance, but in entrepreneurship and business ownership, to have some level of understanding of, this is what I feel that I'm capable of handling, and these are the things that I should be able to outsource to other people. That way it can continue to operate as intended. And I think a lot of people get caught up in the idea of like, oh, self-made, when in reality, I don't think the true intention of any business is to be entirely in control of everything. When people get that first inkling of like, oh, I can really generate income this way, they don't think of the idea of, okay, now what if I turn the keys over to somebody and now I'm still the owner, but I'm not so much like daily operations. And I think it's important to not overwork yourself, build something that works, uh, create the model for it, and then allow other people to succeed under your leadership. I think that's incredible the way that you've done that for yourself. And I think it's important for other people to hear. As far as experiences that you've dealt with as not only like you built your brand on social media, have you seen like a direct impact or influence based on what you've done online in your other work? Like I'm not sure if I phrased that in the best way, but like,
So I started the Frugal Gay just as a social media account. I popped up a website earlier this year. So I'm about a year and a half into this. And my online presence has continued to grow on Twitter. Yesterday I logged into Instagram and I'm like, what happened? And I got a retweet from Bigger Pockets, and I just had like a flood of new followers yesterday. So am I seeing an impact? Definitely. As I get the word out, as I talk to others, I'm doing coaching now through the Frugal Gay, and that can be draining. And that's also where I'm getting to, I'm going to have someone who is responding to tweets or doing that kind of automation for me, because when I was done with my 7 sessions yesterday, I was like drained, and it was, I didn't finish till like 9:30 last night, and I can't do it all. So right now my foot is on the pedal of the Frugal Gay. That's why I started it up, because I knew that I was going to transition away from a job. I do as much, I usually, like Saturdays or Sundays, I'll spend a couple hours working on either listing stuff on eBay, or there's points where you can tell something's not going to sell, and I'll put it in the bundle and sell it off as a lot. So just to kind of keep the merchandise coming and going. And the rentals, I mean, just today, I have projects going in 2 states. I'm in Texas and Ohio, and I'm getting updates from contractors and what they're doing. And I've got a house being painted up in Ohio, and I've got a deck being put in on one of the properties in Texas. So I've got my fingers in, but I'm not all the way, the houses are kind of running. I have really good teams in both states that take care of them. The eBay is as much or as little as I'd like. And then the Frugal Gay is the new venture. And that is, I'm shifting that by the end of the year. And I keep getting, I sometimes get inundated as the account grows with the DMs that I get per day. And I am the type that have a guilt if I haven't responded to everyone. So I'll sit and try and respond to those, but I'm going to try and get to where I can automate some of that.
yeah. So definitely curious as far as, like at any point when you were, going through those early phases, did you expect, maybe did you expect to have the same amount of like drive and workload? Like, did you expect to have the same amount of work to do consistently, or did you know at some point that you were going to be able to like kind of push away from some of the things you had started early?
I had to get used to pushing it away from the things that I started early and get comfortable with it, and have a little faith in the systems that I've set up in place to be able to do that, because I was in a spot where I like to try and do everything. And like you just said, you can't grow if you are, trying to do everything with Frugal Gay, trying to do everything with Cheap, trying to do everything with the rentals. So it was a mind shift to get to where I am right now. Did I know that real estate and Cheap would eventually retire me? No, but I used that because I saw it took me to get to door number 5. And when I got to door number 5, I was actually making money. And I'm like, okay, maybe this is worth it, because I was losing money. I wasn't losing money, but I had like some money pits that I was just constantly spending money into. And a lot of people are like, well, especially door number 3, I just lost money on it every year I worked on it. And people are like, why would you continue to spend money if you're losing money on it? And it was just one of those that I was stubborn. I finally gave it up in 2015. I sold off this property. I sold it for $22,000 less than I bought it for. But I was stubborn and I just kept going. And I started making money on door number 5. And, as I added a door or 2 every year, I started to see the progress. So as I progressed, I saw that, hey, I can actually make money from this. Hey, I don't have to work till I'm 70. I'm going to keep doing this. This is a cool way to connect. And that's the other reason that I started the Frugal Gay, was to connect with others that are doing it. And hey, maybe there's ways that I can do this, that I'm not killing myself. Like, I have a really good friend, and she only does FBA. So she's buying stuff, and she spends about the same amount of time and energy that I do sourcing merchandise and just shipping it off to Amazon every week. And she's bringing in, it's different money that she's bringing in and different products, but we're both making money. And it's both a way for us to be able to stay home and generate income and think outside the box.
Yeah, and you've spoken to some of your connections and some of the things you do associated with other people. What value do you see in networking? What do you think that people could learn about communicating with other people, brands, companies, to develop themselves and grow their own projects or adventure?
I think it's huge if we can work with other brands and continue to grow our brand with their brand, and we can both be beneficial. The connections that I made last year at FinCon when I went were, 10 of the podcasts that I did over the past year were because, I was at this certain spot and I met this person. And then that was how I made connections, had good conversations, networked with people that were in the personal finance space who were doing similar things. And I think it's super important, even if you don't get a brand partnership out of it or a sponsorship, to have that FaceTime with that I was just booking pro sessions for FinCon, which is coming up. And I picked all the companies that I'm already using because I use their product. I believe in their product, and I just want to have a conversation. And if nothing comes out of it, at least I got to talk with someone high up in that company and, say, hey, I use this product. I've made money on it. I don't like this product, or whatever it is I'm going to say to them. And it's important to, be able to do that. And if you don't network, it's not going to happen. If you have to get outside your comfort to be able to grow your brand. And I met another real estate investor through FinCon last year, and just some of the things I've learned from how she's automated, and she hasn't been in a lot of her doors, but the systems that she has in place are awesome. And I would not be doing those if I had not met her and networked.
Yeah, I think so. Just personal background, I had left the military in April of this year, and I want to say 6 days after I left, I was at Mill MoneyCon organized by Lacey Langford, and that was up in Raleigh, North Carolina, or either Raleigh, yeah, I think Cary, North Carolina, actually. But the whole idea was like, if I can get my foot in the door with all of these people in the finance industry, it's a better start than what I would have just leaving the military and playing on LinkedIn for hours. All of it really started on Instagram. I think social media is a huge tool for people to kind of spread their wings and understand what other people are doing in a space that they're interested in. This is going to be my first FenCon, so some familiar faces, but definitely looking forward to making a lot of new connections. I made a post, and it took like 22 minutes for me to have 11 new people to talk to. And
that was smart.
I was like, okay, I could put in a little bit of work before I leave for Florida. And then If it does something, great. If not, also great. I've learned either way. But giving myself 6 hours of extra work, I don't think is as difficult as it could be. Um, and some of the things that you spoke about were like, I'm in a job I might not necessarily like right now, but the money I'm putting away, because I mean, if there's one word that my wife would use to describe me, it's right in your title. It's frugal. She doesn't like to um, hold money as tightly as I do. I pretty much white knuckle any money that comes in until I need to spend it. Um, but the amount of knowledge that I've picked up in the last 4 or 5 months versus where I was when, just leaving my first like real salaried job, it was a huge eye opener. And I had one episode of my podcast when I went to Mill Money Con in April. And now we're working on like 22, 23 episodes. And all of those are conversations where I'm across the table from somebody, or I'm talking about a subject that I haven't talked about before. So all of it's a learning experience. I think it's very valuable to hear what other people have to say, or even just enough digging online can really open your eyes to new opportunities and new topics that you might not have thought about. So one of the things I would like to discuss, like, what did you um what did you see in Mill Money Con that you might not have seen elsewhere in your previous experiences? What do you think the value is in you going to Mill Money Con? And
I
then,
haven't done Mill Money Con. I've just done
or sorry,
FinCon.
not FinCon.
Okay.
Slip of the words.
Um, Being around others that are doing exactly what I'm doing was why I wanted to go do it. I had heard of it. I put it on my goal list last year in 2021. It had gotten canceled or all online in 2020. So I made a point to go and do this because I wanted to be around other people that are interested in this, that have found creative ways, that they're not at a job that's making them $1 million a year, and they found ways to finance deals. They found ways to pay off debt. um, that was the motivation to go. And last year I found a great group. I heard some great conversations. I went to some great talks that motivated me. I got to talk with some sponsors that I really enjoy, and like I said, I work with. And I felt last year, when I had done the math, I drove down, it was in Austin last year, and I think my total investment on it for the hotel and everything was just shy of like $900. And I felt that it was $900 well spent, and that's why I've rebooked. And I'll go this year and hopefully network, because every podcast or every person that I interact with regularly, I met there or we interacted there and we swapped cards, and it was beneficial to me and my brand. And over the past year, I think maybe when I went last year, I had like 2,000 followers on Twitter, and now I know I'm above 20,000 on Twitter. And I know if I didn't have support from those people that I met there, I wouldn't be where I am right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, some of the things that I've learned and some of the people that I've talked to have then furthered me on to meeting other people. Like, it has developed into such a strong network, and I've always been really supportive of anybody that I meet that has similar goals, and I've always been really curious of people that have accomplished it in a different way that I might not have ever thought of. Um, like, talking to people from every walk of what I'm interested in, whether it's business ownership, entrepreneurship, like doing just quick real estate, or maybe they figured a better way to deal with teenagers, because I'm still trying to, like, um, you know, being 23 and having a 17-year-old in the house, that's a different adventure than what I thought I'd be doing. But I think there's a lot to be said for just the genuine effort that everybody put into these conferences, and the network of people that I've met, both from Mill Money Con and FenCon, I think is going to be more than enough of a boost in like seeing them succeed is almost that driving factor. It's like, oh, well, they're taking the hell off. They're not slowing down. It lights a fire under me to also go and produce at least some effort towards, not being in a 9 to 5 at 50 or whatever age that we have discussed. So overall, one of the things that I think is important is understanding an audience. I know that specifically for me, it's mostly like I kind of reach towards 18 to 35. It's an audience that I live in. So I feel like there's some level of understanding there. Do you find any specific like connections between like finance and personal finance and like an LGBT audience, or like how did that come about, and how did you kind of find that as your audience?
So I found the Debt Free Guys, which is another LGBT personal finance, and I networked with them. They went to FinCon. They encouraged me to go when I went last year, and I think it's a little niche space, and a lot in my LGBTQ community do not hit financial independence and work until they're in their 60s and 70s, and it was important to me to show others in my community that it is possible. I am not an overnight success. It took me 18 years of buying ugly houses and selling bras and purses on eBay. But I wanted to really share and show. And as I do these podcasts, I'll get DMs from people that are like, it's amazing to have someone else in the community doing this, and you're just not doing it as quietly as I am. So I wanted others to see that they can do it. And my audience, I held off for so long. People want me to push affiliate links and push certain products. And I, for the longest time up until May, had nothing that I was selling. I was just tweeting what I'm doing. And that was important to me too, because as my brand grew, I didn't want to be shoveling, $10 courses down people's throats and that. I do have the free coaching, which I started because of the amount of DMs, and I do a free intro session on them. And I do that just to kind of, I did not start this in order to make money. I started this as I'm leaving my 9 to 5. I want to have something to do when I'm not doing my 9 to 5. And it's grown into a side hustle business. But my goal when I started this was to show others you can do this, and there are others doing this. And, if I didn't know others were doing this, I probably would have stopped going, but I found bigger pockets, and I went on the web forum, and that's, I figured out how to finance deals and how to fix properties quickly and get top rents. So I think it's important. And if you have someone else out there representing you and showing you, hey, it is possible. And hey, I worked at a movie theater. I did not make a lot of money. It hopefully is motivation to show that you can do this. And that's why I started doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. I can't speak enough on how important it is to have that relatability, and beyond just relatability, having an audience that cares about the same things that you care about, and then building upon that with experience and credibility. Like you said, you've been in a place where you weren't so financially confident, and you weren't so knowledgeable on the things that you've built yourself into. and having someone walk you along some of the same paths that they've already traveled is extremely important. And being able to relate to them along that path is also like it just adds on and compounds into something that's really great. um and maybe I don't relate to every person that I'm trying to talk to in 18 to 35, because there are people older than me and who have experienced more and done more. But I think coming from the idea of like, for me, it was I left the poorest county in all of Florida, and maybe not the best route, but I chose the military first and left that way. And coming out of the military, now I'm learning from so many other people who have both been in the military or who have gone through college and then they start a business and they leave college before their degrees is done. I think all of those things are super interesting. And people who have come from the same background as me or a similar background, it definitely spurred me to do my, um, not necessarily my story, but like put myself out there as an example of, hey, I don't have all the answers, but if I can talk to people and learn from people, that's super important to me. And then whatever I can do to build myself. Like I've talked to so many business owners because I'm trying to start my own business. I've talked to so many podcasters because I'm trying to make sure this podcast means something to me and hopefully one day to an audience. I don't think we're quite there. I got like 7 people, but
I saw one of your guests was David, military.
yeah, Dave Tier. So
Yeah, he did one of my favorite interviews on Bigger Pockets Money. I did it with him and Mindy, and I think that it was just such one of those conversations where an hour flew by, you didn't even know that you were having a conversation, and I think that even just from doing that interview when I did it with him a few months ago, it takes a while to get your feet wet and grow, but the ones that keep going are the ones that it might not hit right away. And I work with another podcaster every week. We do a weekly spaces on, and she does the Adulting is Easy podcast. And she's been at it for 2 years. And like in the last 6 months, her graph has gone like crazy all of a sudden for no real reason. We don't know what it is. Nothing's changed and just certain guests, but it's the ones that stick with it that really, it goes fast until it goes, or I'm sorry, it goes slow until it goes fast. And that was the thing with my Twitter. I was pumping out the same stuff I'm pumping out today a year ago, but it takes a while for it to get your feet wet and get your core audience and connect with those that see the value in it.
And I think once you kind of do get that traction, that imposter syndrome will kick in. But one of the things I always talk about is like, we live in a world that is so hyper connected that we're often exposed to like things we don't need to see yet, which is like, oh, here's this hyper successful, like they started out of a garage and a year and a half later, they were on some of the biggest news networks that you hear about and see every day. Social media allows you to like witness this like instant success or this already successful formula, and then you compare yourself against it. I think it's super important to realize like not everything is going to happen overnight, and especially for people like me where it's like I choose the hard paths on purpose. It's like I see a wall and I run my head into it until it breaks.
I think it's so important, and maybe that's why mine has taken off a little bit. But when I'm genuine and I tell people, hey, I bought this house when I was 22 years old and I lost $22,000 on it. Don't just buy a house to buy a house, because people love to say, I bought this many doors and I did this. I lost a lot of money. I've lost money all along the way. I've made some bad investments. I've invested in things that I didn't fully understand, and that house was one of them. And I think when you give that realistic, hey, because you're right, you have it on social media and you have people, I was in a garage and now I'm a millionaire and I have this many doors and doing this and doing this. It paints unrealistic pictures. So I'm also big on just being honest along the way and genuine. And that's why I like to respond to DMs at the end of the night, because I'm trying to genuinely, hey, this is what worked for me. I'll have people, I have one that she'll send me messages while she's shopping, and she's like, would you like to try this on, or would you do this on eBay? Would you spend your money on it? And I'll give her my honest opinion. Yes, maybe I'll try that, or no, I wouldn't try it. Because I want to see others, not only in my community, succeed and not live paycheck to paycheck, because that sucks. And that's, another goal. So I get what you're saying with the social media glam. And I hope that I try and show you the realistic side of it, because there's days like just yesterday on my Twitter, I was tweeting about having to move I spent all this money setting up a short-term rental, and it was not going to work as a short-term rental. So I had a U-Haul over there, and I got all the furniture out of there and had to move it to another property. And I think that if you share your wins and your losses, you're going to get an audience that truly believes you and doesn't just think that you're photoshopping your life away on social media.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it, like, even if it's not happening right away, there's this element of like, you have to believe in what you're doing, and you have to have confidence in what you're doing. And that's not easy for everybody, especially not in like this weird world where we're trying to educate people on finance, or like teach people better ways to build a business, or whatever it might be. A lot of the talk around money is very nervous and kind of hidden away. It's one of those things that we don't talk about at a bar. When you're getting your drinks, you don't talk about God, politics, or money or sex. And that's one of the things that I like to highlight, where it's like, maybe the conversation doesn't have to be so difficult around money. Maybe people like myself or any of my guests can just come on and sit here for an hour, 30 minutes, however long. And, we're just talking. That's what it is. And if I could be that way with everybody about finance, I think we'd have a much less difficult conversation to tackle. One day, hopefully. That's kind of why I'm here, is to just have an easier conversation around money and be realistic about it.
The friend that I was telling you about that was messaging me that she's broke, I said to her in a message today, I said, let's do this with the money, and we're paying bills. And then I said, and I think it's really important that you tell your 5 kids, she has 5 kids, which are 14 to 4, that you tell them that you're broke, so they understand how to manage their money. And this is, when you set unrealistic expectations and try and avoid it, it just balloons out of control. And she messaged right back, and she's like, yes, I should. So they understand, I'm busting my ass, and this is what we're doing to pay our bills. And yeah, we can't do that fun thing this weekend, and this is why. So I think that aspect is super important, and so many parents avoid it like the plague. So the more that you put honest information out there, and it's not to scare them, oh, we're broke, it's more so they understand, this is where our money's going this week, and next week we'll go and we'll do this fun activity, but this week we're staying at home, we're going to the library, and we're hanging out. And that's something that gets skipped over often.
I think that's great that you bring it up, because earlier this morning I recorded with Rachel. And one of the things that we talked about, she spoke on how she has 5 kids and how she's taught them, like, okay, you're around the age where you're going to start to understand how money works, right? And she said like 6th grade, or it can really start at any age, but she started turning over some of the responsibilities that she was already going to spend money on her kids, right? So whether it's a budget for food, back to school clothes, toys, games, whatever was going to be spent on the kids would incrementally be turned over to them, so that they could see how much money was coming in for that specific portion of the income. And then if they handle it well, they gain additional responsibility. And then teaching kids responsibility with money isn't such a hard conversation if they're the ones handling it day in, day out. Not necessarily handing your kid like 10 grand because they're going to go like they're going to go buy like whatever they want. Maybe a little bit slower, but still it's easier for children and young adults to make mistakes early on. Like you talk about being 22 and losing $22,000. That's not the first $22,000 you're ever going to make, but it would have been easier for you maybe at like 17 to lose whatever relative portion of your income that would have been then. But I don't think any mistake is permanent in the way that there's always an opportunity to build back wealth. I've been in situations where, I didn't know if I was going to be able to sleep under the same roof that I had started under that day. And understanding the idea that that's not a permanent situation. There are ways to work your way out of whether it's debt or not having clothes or like I'm still wearing socks with holes in them right now. Like it hasn't changed dramatically, but the idea that I bought a house last year in what everybody was calling the worst housing market. You said you got 5 doors added under your portfolio. Like nothing's impossible. And I think every path that you try to break fresh ground on is going to be very difficult in the start. So for me, it's all about getting that first foot in the door and then leveraging not only your network, but leveraging your history, your knowledge in whatever else it might have been that pushed you into that space that you're in now. It's like, hey, I never want to be a fry cook again. I want to do this, and this. And then using that previous history as your reason for going forward can really be beneficial. It's a change in mindset as well as your change in effort and direction. Overall, I think we've covered a lot. I think it has been more than more than what I was thinking I was going to discuss at 4 p.m. before I started reaching out to people for a podcast. I appreciate your time. If there's anything you would have liked to have known when you had started, what would that be? And then please let everybody know where they can find you.
Sure. I was recently moving into a new property and I found this notebook from 2011 where I was writing down properties and how much they were selling for. And looking at this notebook 10 years later and looking how prices have like ballooned crazy in Dallas, I wish that I would have bought more property or figured out ways to buy more property early on. Because obviously I can't go and buy a $22,000 house now that's a $180,000 house now. So I wish I would have, that's one of those things that I didn't learn the power of leverage and how much it can propel your wealth. You can find me on thefrugalgay.com. You can book a free intro session. We can chat about eBay, we can chat about real estate, we can chat about whatever you'd like. And you can find me super active on Twitter and Instagram at the Frugal Gay 11.
Awesome. I appreciate your time. Hope you have a good rest of your weekend. And any time in the future that you would like to talk, or we can kind of host a little fireside chat about where things have gone since we first talked. Look forward to seeing you at FenCon. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend, like I said earlier. All right.
Thank you.